Every year, the CII Research Institute publishes landmark studies on both corporate best practices and the state of the Hispanic community around its 4 pillars. CII research drives thought leadership and empowers stakeholders to create a more inclusive corporate America that both works with and invests in the Hispanic community. Every initiative encourages data-driven analysis and focuses on problem solving. These principles promote awareness of new developments and encourage the community to share new and innovative solutions. The jewel in the crown of CII research is the highly anticipated annual Corporate Inclusion Index. No publication has more impact on decisions involving Hispanic diversity and inclusion in corporate America today. In order to recognize those companies that the index has proven to be the true leaders in Hispanic diversity and inclusion, the CII Research Institute created the Corporate Inclusion Index Awards. These awards highlight those 5-star companies whose Hispanic inclusion efforts and strategies have yielded the absolute best results. For close to 35 years, CII has led the way in supporting Hispanic inclusion in corporate America. Come be a part of the movement. Come be a part of our community.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this session on Bridging the Diversity Gap with Intention. The video you just saw was about the CII Corporate Inclusion Index, or CII, our annual survey for measuring corporate inclusion of the Hispanic community. My name is Eric Lopez, and I'm the Director of Corporate Accountability here at CII. I also lead our efforts with the CII at CII. I'll talk a little bit more about the CII later. I hope you've been enjoying the sessions and networking break. Remember to post on social media using the hashtag CII events. Thank you to our co-host, Target, for their support, and now a short video from Target.
Hi guys, this is my Target store.
Just because there's a lot going on, it doesn't mean that we can't celebrate those big moments.
It's a boy.
We're all here with the common goal of bringing joy to our guest life, to our life. It's all really connected.
Today, I'll be talking to 4 diversity and inclusion leaders from 4 of our 2020 Corporate Inclusion Index participants about how to lead more intently in each of our pillars: employment, procurement, philanthropy, and governance. The Corporate Inclusion Index, or CII, is CII's annual survey, which it administers to Fortune 100, CII corporate member, and other companies from across the country. The CII looks at how companies are performing with respect to diversity and inclusion with Hispanics in each of these areas and determines how diverse and inclusive they are. In employment, CII looks at talent management practices as well as employee resource groups. In procurement, we're looking at supplier spend and supplier diversity. In philanthropy, we're looking at spend and give with respect to dollars given and volunteer hours with the Hispanic community. And finally, in governance, we're looking at the diversity of the leadership within the company, including their board, executives, and exempt employees. Now, each of our speakers today will talk about how they are leading with intent in each of these areas, as well as the importance of such practices as diverse slates, leadership development, and support networks, such as employee resource groups, the business case for diversity, and the importance of diverse leadership. So our first pillar is employment. And what the Corporate Inclusion Index tries to measure with employment is how companies are recruiting and nurturing their Hispanic talent throughout the leadership pipeline. So from the very beginning of someone's career, such as an intern, all throughout mid-level managers. And so we're looking at recruitment practices and what kind of development support companies have for their leaders and talents, including mentorship programs, sponsorship programs, and succession planning. What are companies doing to help bring up these leaders and support their development? And in a lot of ways, that's why a lot of you are here. You're here because you've been marked in a way, or you've been picked, or you've been selected to attend the Leadership Pipeline program for that kind of development. And that's what we're very intently measuring each year with the CII and the companies that participate with us. Another thing that we measure in employment is the employee resource groups and what kind of resources the ERGs receive from their corporations to help continue to develop that leadership in a safe space for the resource group attendees and participants. And so that's what we'll be talking about next in our first pillar, employment. So first with us, we have Kelly Bronson, Director, Early Career Diversity and Inclusion and University Recruiting Programs at Cigna. Thank you for joining us today, Kelly. First, tell us a little about yourself and your role at Cigna.
Hi, Eric. So first of all, thanks for the invite. I'm glad to be here. So at Cigna, I lead, as you mentioned there, all of our kind of early career programs. So if you think about college recruiting, university relations, our leadership development programs, and all the recruiting activities that go along with that, which includes our internship program. I also oversee our diversity and inclusion efforts across talent acquisition, regardless of early career or not, but diversity and inclusion when it comes to talent acquisition.
Now, Cigna has been a longtime participant in our CII survey every year, and this year, as in previous years, you were a 5-star awardee in the employment pillar. So I'm curious, how is Cigna leading with intent in its employment initiatives that awarded it a 5-star this year?
I love the word intent, first of all, Eric. I think that gives us purpose. You know, it's an imperative for us, not only from a talent perspective, but a business imperative, right? So, you know, our mission at Cigna is to improve the health, the well-being, and peace of mind for those we serve. So we feel that in order to do that, our employee population must be representative of the customers we serve. At Cigna, we have lots of conversations around this topic, but we tend to defer to the word representation, just because representation places us in a better position for inclusivity and equity along those lines. A couple of things that we do specifically with intent, it's kind of, I guess it's multi-pronged, but I'll walk through about 3 of those. So the first of that is our early career programs. We have 12 different leadership development programs. 4 of those are focused at the graduate level, so MBA and grad school, and the other 8 are for undergrads. So what we do there is we're very, very intentional with the schools that we partner with. We take a look at representation. We look at the volume of students at those particular schools. We look at the makeup from a gender perspective, a race perspective, ethnicity perspective, as our opportunity to increase our front-end pipeline when it comes to talent. With our leadership development programs, we've also established aspirational outcomes across every single one of those programs that our program offices aspire to. And that is, we want to see representation, 50% women, 50% men. We also want to see at a minimum 33% underrepresented minority students in our leadership development programs, along with 10% military veterans, which is a great aspirational goal. We're close. We're about 47% women as of last year's class, and 31% underrepresented minority students. So we're progressing in great strides, very proud of that work. The other thing that we do is we've established diversity of slate requirements for our professional levels. So if you think about this, we try to burn the candle at both ends, if I can kind of use that term. We think it's important on the front end to bring in diverse talent and grow that talent from within through our leadership development programs. But we also recognize that we have gaps. In order to get those folks there, we have to go to the external marketplace in order to attract diverse populations to Cigna. So any role that we post externally into the marketplace, anything that's considered a people leader, so that's kind of our first level leaders all the way up to our executive leaders, there is a requirement to have a diverse slate before any candidate is presented to the hiring manager. So that's fantastic. I think that's a really wonderful thing that we've started. The third thing that I think I'll wrap up here with is that we also stood up in a very deliberate way a recruiting alliance council. And that recruiting alliance council meets monthly and brings representatives across all of the ERGs that we have to talk about recruiting. We talk about development. We talk about national diversity events and regional events. It also gives voice to our recruiters to amplify kind of hot jobs or tough roles that we're looking to fill as a way to use our employee resource groups from a referral process. So those are probably three things that I think I would point to right away, Eric.
Those are amazing, and thank you for sharing all that information. There's so much we can talk about, but one of the things that definitely stands out from what you said is diverse slates. You know that that's something that HACER has been asking about on the survey for years, and one of the issues that some may have with diverse slates is that they may see it as targeting certain groups, favoring certain groups over others. But certainly companies that have been doing it for a long time know that there's a difference, that diverse slate is not necessarily favoritism, but giving underrepresented groups a fair chance at opportunities. You're not selecting them because of what group they come from, but you're just making sure that they are part of the selection process. How would you say Cigna uses diverse slates in order to make sure there is a diverse population of candidates?
Yeah, the front end of your comment is exactly kind of what we wanted to avoid, right? Is this appearance that kind of thing is happening? So for us, in our process, we actually have a way, not by person, but by at the aggregate, to see how our diversity is stepping through our recruiting process. So what we can do is we use Workday in our talent acquisition practices. We are able to see at an aggregate level of the active candidates that have been screened, qualified, and meet the requirements of the position. We can see at a high level how many women are still in our talent pool, how many what people have self-described themselves as a person of color in our candidate pool. So what we have then said is that as a requirement, in order to present any resumes to a hiring manager, you must meet the minimum qualifications of what we determine as a diverse slate. And that is, you must have at least 3 candidates. You must have at least 1 woman, and you must have at least 1 person of color in those diverse slates for consideration to the hiring manager. And those are basic minimums. There could be more, but there cannot be less. So that's how we kind of define diverse slates.
That's perfect. Thank you so much for that. Now we only have a couple of minutes left, and I do want to ask, what would you give as advice to other leaders in your position about how to lead more intently in employment practices?
This is such a great question, and hopefully you'll have me back sometime to expand on this. But I think there's a couple of things that I'll leave you with. Is that I think you should establish aspirational goals, right, and measure against them. I think it's very, very important to know what you're striving for. And I think the way you can do that is every one of the leaders that are in any type of business create a QBR, right, or a quarterly business review, to where they take a look at the rhythm of the business, the profits, the losses, where are we going strategically. At Cigna, we have stood up very intently a QBR that focuses solely on D&I. We take a look at every single band level, quarter over quarter, to find out how are we moving the needle from a representation perspective across each of those bands. We talk about attrition, we talk about promotions, we talk about internal movement and external movement. So all those sort of things are super important. So that would be the advice, Eric, that I would give to any leader in this space, is to be very deliberate and treat your talent the same way you would your other QBR business.
So Kelly, you talked a little about your recruitment practices and where you're recruiting diverse talent from, but what does Cigna do in order to make sure that the diverse talent stays within the company once you've recruited them?
I think that's the kind of magic question, right? Is about retention, because I think with all great purpose we could recruit until we're blue in the face, but if the talent that we seek doesn't stay, then how are we really kind of advancing things here, right? So I think it's a dynamic question that I don't know that we have a perfect fit for. but I can tell you that we deliberately use our leadership development programs as a way to grow people internally. We take a look at our talent management practices. And because we do look at movement internally through these QBRs that I mentioned, it becomes very apparent if we have stagnation, especially in our leadership development programs, and especially at some of our lower bands. We do take a look at that and kind of figure out how is it that we can move folks along in their journey. But I don't know that it's a perfect answer because it is complicated. We've got to figure that out though, because talent today is different than talent 20 years ago. Gone are the days that someone's going to stay with a company for 20 years, right? Those days are long gone. So retention efforts and retention programs become more prevalent. So I think we're on a journey, but not necessarily cracked the code yet.
That is so great. Thank you so much for joining us today, Kelly.
My pleasure. Thanks for the invite. Hopefully you'll have me back sometime. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I look forward to it. The following pillar is procurement. For procurement, what we're looking at is there's some demographic information that we collect for procurement. Obviously, how much companies are spending with their contracts with Hispanic suppliers, and how many Hispanic suppliers are working with. But there are other things too. Similar to employment, we are collecting support information. So what are they doing to help bring up Hispanic suppliers to be better partners with them? And in a lot of ways, this is a very important topic these days, as there's a growing number of Hispanic businesses, small businesses throughout the country. In fact, it's one of the fastest growing demographics in small businesses in the country. And so what are companies doing to help continue to develop those businesses and leaders to be better partners with them? That's one of the topics that we'll be talking about here today, as well as, what can employees internally inside the companies do to help also with that effort. A lot of times what we hear in our survey process is that companies can't find Hispanic talent or Hispanic suppliers to work with. And so it will take the internal talent to tell companies where to go, how to find these businesses within the community to be partners in their efforts. Hi, now with us is Arthur Valdez, Executive Vice President, Chief Supply Chain and Logistics Officer at Target. Thank you for joining us today, Arthur.
Thank you very much, Eric. I appreciate the opportunity. Very important topic that I'm going to enjoy talking about.
Of course. And well, let's tell the audience a little bit more about yourself and what you do at Target.
Yeah, my current role is probably, I will be honest, my favorite role that I've done in my career. A little bit about my background first is come from a mother who's Cuban and a father who has Mexican descent but born in the U.S. Mother left Havana in 1962 when Fidel Castro took over and was sent with her two sisters for reasons of safety out of the country to an orphanage in southern Colorado. And my father and his family had settled in southern Colorado. So I'm a Colorado boy from what I like to call Chubano, which is a little Chicano and a little Cubano.
That's great, Arthur. Thank you for that background. Now, Target has been a leader in procurement diversity for a number of years. Tell us a little bit about what is Target doing these days to lead with intent in procurement diversity?
Yeah, no, very good. So let me expand a little bit more on my role, and that'll help you kind of understand the diversity piece that we're pursuing. So my role today is managing the end-to-end supply chain for everything we do that's imports from our manufacturers in China and other parts of Asia, as well as moving that product into the US, getting it into our distribution centers, getting the inventory ready for replenishment into our stores, as well as fulfillment on our digital business. And as you can imagine, with the number of customers that Target has today, there is definite need to make sure that we have the right products at the right time for all the different cultures and all the different pieces of the business that we try to manage for the different cultures. So very much focused then on understanding our D&I space, not only from our vendors and our supply chain people that support us, but also our team members and the importance of that, right? And I really like to think that Target, with the values that it has around being purposeful and intentful on making sure that we have good thought, we have good leadership, we have a good focus across the board around who we are partnering with across internal and external problems. All those pieces are very important based off of what I believe is a business imperative, which is to make sure that you're taking care of your customer and the cultures within your customer base. That leads to many different partnerships and relationships and things that have to be done and engagements with different people across different cultures in the way we do business. So we very much stand for it as an organization. I'm very proud to work for an organization that has that level of diversity, inclusion, and thought across many platforms of our business. But it is very much about, in my role, making sure that all those pieces are influenced along with the operating model that Target stands for in the values of D&I.
Absolutely, and thank you for that. You've touched on so many things there that we try to, as an organization, expand upon with our participants. You know, it's more than just about what you're doing with your suppliers. It's also about your customers. It's also about your employees, and it's also about decision makers. Who's deciding what is going into the shelves? What is the Target ethos on diversity in all areas? That is important too. So it's important to have that diversity up top. And you yourself, as a leader in this space, is sure a sign that Target really cares about that. Tell us a little bit more about what Target can tell other companies who are looking to diversify, who are looking to expand in this space, their thought leadership in diversity and inclusion. What can they do to lead with intent as well?
Yeah, no, very good. And I think what we stand for as an organization and the D&I space that we work and live every day is what I described a little earlier, and I'll go a little bit more in detail, is being purposeful and intentful. Mm-hmm. And that purpose and that intentional way of doing business is very important. And you got to plan for it. It's not something that just happens, right? It is a part of your business plan. It's a part of the way you think about making sure that others are at the table, providing their thoughts, the different cultures that are there from your customers. It's getting feedback from your customers. It's getting feedback from your internal team. And then it's bringing those individuals together. For example, as I shared with you my background in the Latinx community, at Target, that's a very important intentional, purposeful approach that I take with our other officers. We have about 23 officers that is vice president above here at Target. And I try to make sure that in my role in the platform that I have, I bring that group together quite often. And I have conversations with them about, okay, how are we making sure we're mentoring our internal Latinx community? Are we being purposeful? Are we driving the change around helping others develop within our community that helps them not be so intimidated and gather more confidence and be supportive to them as they have others that they can look up to and be a part of the community, right? So once again, being intentful and purposeful and making sure that the things that you're doing, yes, align to your business, but within this specific community, the Latinx community, how are those that have the experience helping others? And that's one piece that I really try to influence and provide my leadership to take advantage of, that I would offer other organizations and other people who have that same platform within this community to do the same.
Thank you for that, Arthur. Now, let me ask, as you touched upon it a little bit earlier, on what companies can do in order to benchmark and track the diversity metrics that are going on within their organization, especially in procurement. This is an area that we've found that for years companies are developing and trying to get better at, but they're having some trouble understanding how and why they should do this.
Yeah, no, good question, Eric. I can tell you that it's hard. It's not an easy thing to do. And once again, really understanding what you're trying to solve for the customer is the starting point, and the different cultures and the different varieties that are out there in products. It's really trying to make sure then that you have a good understanding of the number of things that you can actually attract or adopt vendor and supplier partnership relationships to do, and make sure that they align to the products that you have. So example, here at Target, we have many different regions that our stores are allocated and located. we know where those products are at. We know how they're selling. We know which type of cultures and organizations actually come after those products and want to buy those products in different areas. So we track that information internally, right? And then we're able to either go out and create and manufacture a lot of those brands ourselves, because we are 50% of the products you see in a Target store are actually owned and manufactured by our own brand system and process. And then the other 50%, we're looking to make sure that we can purchase and buy and partner with our vendors to make sure that they have a good understanding of what's being asked for and what's being wanted and desired from our customers. So knowing what that is from a customer base first, tracking those numbers is important. And then, yes, it's hard to then determine, are you hitting the spot and on the mark? But start tracking that is the only way to share that. And when you go out to benchmark, very early days for many other retailers, so it's hard to try and benchmark that. So it's really an internal effort right now at Target.
Absolutely. I think you're not alone there. And I love that image that you pose of bridging the gap between those two things of customer and supply chain. I think that a lot of times some people may think of the supply chain as a silo, as, you know, this is its own thing, but it's really interconnected, not just with the customer base, but also, as you mentioned earlier, with other employee leadership and employee input. And you did also mention, you alluded to ERGs or the internal employee network at Hasser, ERG at Target. ERGs stands for Employee Resource Groups, and they play a critical role in helping to develop future leadership in different areas of an organization. How is Target leveraging their ERGs, particularly their Hispanic ERGs, to develop more leadership within the procurement space?
Yeah, wonderful, and very passionate about IAM, Eric. So our Hispanic Business Council is very much a focus of what we're trying to manage. And you heard me talk about a little bit ago, the officer group at Target. And we're anchored to our Hispanic Business Council around the mission and vision that we have. And the number one value that you'll see that's important to us as we've all decided to work and become the effort is, how do we develop the other Latinx community within our organization and provide those opportunities for them to know how to take advantage of positions and things to do. I, for example, was an individual that graduated from college, first generation. I came into the work environment with not very much confidence. I came into the work environment kind of like most of us in the Latinx community. My grandparents, my mom and dad said, "Hito, you have a great job. Why you want to mess it up? Stay where you're at," right? And, you know, I had certain ambitions, and I think many of us do on this call that are listening today have many of those ambitions, and it's okay. It's okay to stretch out there, and it's people like myself and the other officers at Target who have been there, done that within our Hispanic Business Council create a pathway for building that confidence, right? Because you don't want to be that individual that sits in that room and a vice president or the CEO of the organization is asking you a question and you lock up and you get nervous, right? It's normal for those things to happen, but how do we help those leaders within our community know that we're all human and we're all going to be imperfect, and to answer those questions and being yourself and building confidence that you can be in that room, it's critical to our community, as well as how we develop those in our community to do more. So very much a focus for us in our Hispanic Business Council, and making sure that we balance the authenticity of who we are as a race and as a culture with the business environment.
Wow, what great advice and what a great response. Thank you so much, Arthur, for joining us today and for offering us your wisdom.
Thank you very much, Eric. I appreciate being here with the other panelists. Thank you.
So in the philanthropy pillar, more than perhaps any of our other pillars, you can most clearly see intent, what companies do and how they partner with the communities that they are embedded in, shows what is their ethos, what matters to them, and how they do or don't care about what goes on in the communities that are their customers and that they're in. And so some of the things that we certainly measure are the dollars that are given to the community. But I think even more importantly is the volunteerism, how employees are volunteering within their communities, how employees are leveraging their talent to give back to the community, and how the organization supports those efforts. It is extremely important for for some employees that the companies care about what they care about. It's part of the retention equation, particularly as research has shown that millennials do care deeply about this issue and about the issues that are important to them, and that the companies that they work with, especially, they spend a lot of time in, care about those issues too. And so next we'll hear a little bit about how companies can do that a little bit better. Now with us is Emilio Gonzalez, Executive Director, Policy and Strategic Alliances at Verizon. Thank you for joining us today, Emilio.
Thank you, Eric. It's good to be with you.
Tell us a little bit more about your role at Verizon.
I've been with Verizon 17 years now. Executive Director for Strategic Alliances and Public Policy. I work within public policy law and national security, and that's led by our General Counsel. And in my work, I try to, whenever possible, try to do some good things with a lot of our stakeholders and groups like HACER, and also marry perspectives of communities of color with our policy positions and make sure we try to be aligned whenever possible.
Great. Thank you for that. And you highlighted some key segue points, which are community and working together. Verizon is a 5-star company in the 2020 HACER CII Survey and has been doing really great things in philanthropy over the past couple of years. And so we wanted to really talk to you to get a sense for what Verizon is doing these days to lead with intent in the philanthropy field.
Yeah, and I think thank you for the word intent. I think these things are not by accident. They require design and attention and constant work. I would say on all of these fronts, we've been at it a long time, and it's kind of part of our DNA as a company. So, for example, in terms of the makeup of our workforce, we're more than 50% minority and women in terms of the entire 150,000 employees of the company. We also make sure that we bring our scale in the market as a major employer to provide opportunities for women and minority-owned companies to provide us with goods and services. So in the last 10 years, we've done about 64 billion with a B with women and minority-owned businesses. And just last year in 2019, we did about $6 billion. So, it's an engine for growth and opportunity there. And then, all of this requires good governance and diverse governance, as you know, at the board level, where of our, 5 of our 10 members are women or minorities. So it's a highly diverse board, as you know, from the numbers in corporate America. And it's not only the right thing to do, but I think it's good business to have people at the table who can bring different perspectives to bear and make sure you're looking at things from all angles, particularly when you're doing business on a global scale. On the philanthropic side, we have several initiatives, including a lot of work on supporting social justice causes. We have programs like Latinos at Work, which is providing training in different cities through community centers for really a lot of them are moms with kids, and it provides them a place where they can bring their child and still be in the same place and do some workforce digital training to hopefully get ready for the new kind of jobs that are coming in our economy. We also have the Verizon Innovative Learning Schools. We're now approaching 300 schools where we completely take them on and provide them with everything from connectivity at home to tablets to connections for the teachers, helpful curriculum that integrates technology so that they can get those skills now. And all these are Title I schools, meaning they're typically, unfortunately, poor and minority. And that's kind of a high-level snapshot of what we do. And then there's also the response to what's happened with COVID, which is a whole different conversation.
Right. I did want to get into that because, a lot of the things you mentioned are being impacted today by what the current situation, whether that be, recruitment and employees, small businesses are suffering a lot, and certainly the communities that use service are also being impacted by COVID and other current events. What is Verizon doing today to help them out with these issues?
You know, a number of things, but one thing that I find truly remarkable and that I'd like to share with Hassan and your viewers is since the beginning of COVID, we've had to close many stores and adjust many things, as you know. We have not laid off a single employee.
Wow.
So what's happened is many employees have been retrained for like customer service jobs or other jobs in supply chain, but no one has been let go. And, you know, despite some strong economic headwinds, we're really proud of that fact because those are families and communities that get impacted. So when you talk about intent, you know, that's very intentful, and we recognize we have impact at the community level through jobs. So I just wanted to bring that up first, but also we've done a number of things, you know, $5 million to No Kid Goes Hungry, $10 million in food for first responders and medical professionals, free New York Times digital edition to K through 12 while they're dealing with the pandemic. And we started, we're now serving 40 states, millions of students. I can't tell you the exact number. We're providing those states basically infrastructure and connectivity at discounted rates so they may provide the communications they need back to the kids at home. So all that to say, you know, we've been busy, but we've also, one last thing I'd mention in this context, this doesn't have a dollar value per se, but we've been very active in advocating for some social issues we think are important. We've done so publicly, like on immigration reform, comprehensive. We've also been calling out for fixing and protecting the DACA and the Dreamers. Most recently, we've also come out in support with an amicus at the Supreme Court in support of same-sex marriage. So, you know, we can also not only provide our wallet when possible, but we also have a voice as employers and as taxpayers to hopefully move things in a positive direction.
Yeah, no, that's really great. And I'm loving everything you're saying, because what it's really saying is that, you know, philanthropic effort and the impact on the community is a holistic approach. It's not just dollars. It's not just volunteering, though those are important. Certainly keeping community members employed so that they can continue to provide to their families is also very important to that. And also supporting communities whenever you can in different ways, including policy reform, is very, very important. So thank you for providing all of that insight. What would you tell leaders in a similar position as you? What could they do? What can they learn in order to be better leaders, lead with intent in this area, particularly these days?
So it's a good question. I'd say a couple of things. Regardless of what business or industry you're in, Latinos, Latinas are and will continue to be a major part of the economy, just as they will on the political spectrum. So I say that because regardless of where you are in an organization, if you're Latinx, you have an important perspective that you can contribute not only to the philanthropy of an organization, but its policy, its social responsibility. It's a good time to raise issues and bring issues that impact you at home and your community. And by way of example, you know, I don't know much about the criminal justice system. Fortunately, I've never had to deal with it. But at work, I brought up what the inconsistencies are in the system, the shortcomings that are leading to more people of color for nonviolent crimes getting incarcerated longer and longer, and that has a social and economic cost, as you know. As a result, we've launched an effort to do advocacy on this, including pro bono work through our legal, to help people maybe with things like expungement, or second chances, reentry, etc. So that's just an example of how I think people can bring intent and their voices to the conversation at work. All that to say, I think it's a new time. COVID has changed the world. It's a great opportunity for companies, small, medium, and large, to speak up, to be a part of the conversation, to show us how to do it with civility, and to to fix this mess. We're all going to have to work together, and that includes public, private, and NGOs and nonprofits.
That's
So
right.
a great opportunity despite the situation.
That's right. I completely agree. And what a great message for other companies to hear. And, I just want to congratulate you once again as a company for being a 5-star company and for your creativity in this area, because like I've already mentioned, it's not just dollars and volunteer hours, but there are so many ways to help the community, including if any one of us or any one of our listeners has had to deal with the legal system, we all know how expensive that can be. So to provide pro bono services to the community is so invaluable. So thank you for all of that. Thank you, Emilio, for joining us today and for sharing some of your wisdom.
Thank you, Eric. Enjoyed it.
Final pillar, governance. We're looking at what a company's leadership looks like. We're still examining, like in employment, the leadership pipeline, but we're examining who are the decision makers within the company, who's deciding what are the important initiatives, where do companies base themselves out on their operations. These decisions and who's making them are extremely important, especially when it comes to diversity and inclusion. The more diverse your board of directors or C-suite is, perhaps the more diverse your rest of the employee base is, the more diversity is a part of the equation when you're thinking about who your customers are and what the needs of the community is as well. So it's a very important pillar, and it touches upon all of the other pillars that we have discussed so far. Some of the things that we look at here are board size and composition. What is the makeup of your C-suite and executives, as well as what is the makeup of your exempt employees, as exempt employees tend to be those who have access to those opportunities to become leaders within the company. And so our next conversation will be about what companies can do with leading with intent in the governance space. Next, we have with us Joan RectorMcLaughton, Vice President, Associate General Counsel, and Corporate Secretary for Sodexo, Inc. Thank you for joining us today, Joan.
Thank you for having me here. It's a real pleasure.
Now tell us a little bit about what you do over at Sodexo.
Sure. Well, first I want to say that we've been members of this here for quite a long time, and certainly it's been a beneficial partnership for us, and hopefully a mutually beneficial one for you guys. And so we're really happy and honored to be here. As you mentioned, I'm Vice President, Associate General Counsel. That means I'm a lawyer, don't hate me, by training. And I've been with the company a very long time. I'm not going to date myself too much, but I have a lot of tenure there, which means I've held a lot of different roles. And currently, I oversee our corporate governance platform, litigation, and state and federal relations, as well as sort of law department administration. But I've also held roles in our corporate responsibility arena. In fact, I stepped up our platform, our initial platform for corporate responsibility. And sort of in addition to my work-related roles, I'm involved in some of our other activities. I sit on the board of the Sodexo Foundation, which is focused on eradicating childhood hunger. And I'm a member of SOUL, which is our Latino affinity group, and ALF, which is our African American affinity group. And actually support SOUL as their legal counsel. So I've done quite a lot in the company, and it, just in case you're not familiar with Sodexo. Sodexo is an integrated food and facilities management company. We're global. We're in over 80 countries. Before COVID, we employed over 427,000 employees, And in addition to doing food and facilities management, we also do personal benefits where we will supply services that help recognize employees through employee recognition programs. And then what we call home care services, where we do have a concierge service and a child care service as well, and a home care service for the elderly and people who need home care. So that's a little bit about me and a little bit about the company.
Wow, that was very comprehensive. Thank you so much for that. And what you do so much at Sodexo, and I wish we had time to discuss all of it. Today, we're going to focus on governance. Now, Sodexo is a 2020 5-star awardee in our governance pillar and has been doing really great work in governance for a while, in part, I'm sure, thanks to your work. Tell us a little bit about how Sodexo is leading with intent in the governance space.
Sure, and you know, intent is really the key word here, because all of our work is very, very intentional around diversity and inclusion at Sodexo. But first, let me talk a little bit about what we mean by governance, because different companies may think of it in different ways. And I do think it aligns very, very closely with what you guys view as governance as well. But it's really a systematic framework that we incorporate that dictates how we govern the organization. It establishes who has authority to do what. It establishes sort of working norms and policies and practices. And it really kind of strives to balance letting employees have the breadth and the freedom to do their job and do it in a sort of entrepreneurial way, but at the same time having a few controls and oversight on what's going on so we can kind of meet our business needs. And obviously, D&I is very important to that. We need to have all voices at the table at the highest level as well as the lowest level in the organization, so that we can make sure that we are really taking a diverse view on everything we're doing. So part of how we do that in governance, well, there are probably 4 prongs. One is about recruitment and retention. The second one would be about sort of where we position diversity within the organization. The third one would be about leadership at the top. And then the fourth one would really be about some of our performance and bonus structures. So let me start with recruitment and retention. We are very, very deliberate in how we go about recruiting for high-level positions in our company, and really for all VP positions in our company. All external recruiters as well as internal recruiters are required to present us with a diverse slate. So that means that they have to make sure that we have pipeline candidates to meet our needs, and that often while it encompasses the position that we're filling at the time, it also kind of drills down to make sure that we have a pipeline of diverse candidates as we're going forward. And so that has made a huge difference and help us in sort of recruiting some very fantastic people who bring the kind of breadth and experience that we want. The second item I mentioned was sort of the positioning of D&I in the organization. We have a Chief Diversity Officer. She reports directly to the CEO, Jerry Mason Hall is her name. She has a dedicated staff. She has a dedicated budget. She has goals and performance metrics that she and her team have to meet, but she also works very, very closely with our business segments, and they have goals and performance metrics that they have to meet around diversity and inclusion. And it's a very, very integrated approach for us. We try to make diversity and inclusion intentional, but at the same time sort of seamless in how we go about operating our business. And even more importantly than all of that is, I think, from the VP level and above, everyone is bonused on diversity and inclusion. We all have performance metrics we have to meet. We have a scorecard, a diversity and inclusion scorecard that we keep tabs on. And the Chief Diversity Officer's office prompts us when we are falling behind on that scorecard. and our bonuses are tied to diversity and inclusion goals. So that makes a huge, huge difference in making sure that, you know, we are leading with attention when it comes to governance. The next thing I would say, certainly last but not least, is sort of the role from the top and where our CEO leads in our organization. He and our past CEOs have really been committed to diversity and inclusion. They support it, as you can tell by the way it's positioned in the organization. They understand that it's a brand differentiator for us. They understand it's part of our brand positioning. They see it as vital to employee engagement, and certainly our employee engagement surveys have shown that. And they are often communicating about it both internally and externally. Our current CEO has communicated around immigration issues. He's communicated about what's going on with racial injustice. He works very closely with the Chief Diversity Officer so that when his messages go out, and actually during COVID, we've been getting messages daily, that we make sure, as appropriate, to talk about diversity and inclusion, to talk about the impact of COVID on people of color. So the tone at the top is set by him, and it is very, very intentional. So I think that sort of covers, from a governance perspective, how we look at diversity and inclusion. But as I said, it's a core component of who we are, and it's a core component of everything that we do.
Wow, no, thank you so much. And it's really no wonder why Sodexo is a 5-star company in governance. I mean, you know, so many things that you guys are doing are what we're looking for in a company to do as a minimum, and to excel and exceed in this area, in order to be more inclusive of not just Hispanic employees and leaders, but all leaders throughout the company. And there's so many things that you also have, and what I see with other 5-star companies. 5-star companies do diverse slates. The leadership in diversity starts from the top. These are kind of the things that I see that companies who are excelling and leading in these areas are doing. But what would you say to a company who is looking for advice, other leaders in governance, on how to become better in their governance practices, especially in diversity? What would you say to them as a piece of advice for improvement?
Well, I would say look at the very important work that you're doing. Look at your survey. Look at how you and others in the diversity leadership circle define best practices. And you really need to measure yourself against that. And, you know, you might find a category where, you know, you can't attain a 3, but if you're at a 1, you can strive to get to the 2 within a period of time, and then have a goal to get to the 3 or the 5 or whatever the top rating is within a period of time. I mean, this is a journey, and to do it genuinely, it's not just flipping a switch.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's really about putting together a process and making sure you have the right people and you're getting the right coaching. I mean, as we have gone through this journey, and we have not only brought in internal people, but we stood up a diversity advisory committee to help us look at what the best practices are, and then more importantly, how to operationalize them within our company. Each company is unique. So, you know, you have to figure out how to make this work in your company. And frankly, you know, the way we did it may not be the right way for you to do it, but there's so much to learn from looking at best practices, talking to other people, and then putting a plan in place. And then, you know, I would also say that you shouldn't have to, but it's certainly effective bonusing people on progress. I mean, I think it sends a really strong message to the organization about where your priorities are. And if this is a priority, then you should definitely make sure your people know that. But I think it also is, you know, it's an incentivizer for people, and it sends a strong message externally as well. So I would say those are the most important things. But I would also say listen to your employees, get their viewpoints, what's important to them. I think that's very important, and certainly affinity groups and other channels of communication are important.
Wow, such great advice to close us out here. Thank you so much, Joan, for joining us and for giving us this insight into your practices and the impact that Sodexo is having in the governance space. Thank you once again.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Thank you, Kelly Bronson from Cigna, Arthur Valdez from Target, Emilio Gonzalez from Verizon, and Joan McLaughton from Sodexo. Thank you for joining us today and for sharing your wisdom. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation and were able to take away some lessons from our speakers about the importance of leading with intent, especially given everything that has happened this year. Each of our speakers today talked about how they are leading with intent in these areas, as well as the importance of implementing diverse slates into recruitment practices, leadership development and support networks, having a strategic plan for diversity, giving back to the community, and the importance of diverse leadership. If you have any questions about the CII, I will be at the speakers booth from 5 to 5:15 today. Thank you once again to our speakers, and thank you to Target and all of our sponsors. The next session is the Latina Empower Her Executive Perspectives, which is starting in a few minutes. Don't forget to post on social media with the hashtag HASER events. Thank you.